Hello, my name is Marwa Al Salami, and today I'll be presenting my topic Freedom of Expression Has a Limit. Freedom of speech is often seen as a basic right for everyone, something that protects truth and justice. But in reality, it is not always equal, and it's not always the case. Around the world, and even here in Canada, this right is often controlled by the people who are in power. And my presentation will explore how that happens, especially through the Gaza conflict and the York University case. Starting with the introduction, freedom of expression should belong to everyone. It's how people speak the truth and stand up for unfairness and injustice. But what I have noticed that this right often has invisible limits. For example, governments and institutions claim to protect peace, but they use these limits to control what we say. And a clear example for this is how people showing support for Palestinians are treated. During the Gaza war and even here in Canada, students and professionals face punishment just for showing and expressing sympathy and support for Palestinians. And this basically shows how freedom is often only protected when it aligns with authority. Moving forward to talk about the freedom of expression in Canada. In theory, Canada guarantees freedom of speech under Section 2B of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedom. I know it sounds strong, a promise that we can freely express our thoughts and beliefs. But, however, there's another section, which is Section 1, that allows reasonable limits on those freedoms. At first, this might seem logical, limits that prevent harm or protect others. But the problem is that what's considered reasonable is often depends on who's speaking and what they're speaking about. When powerful people or institutions speaks, their words are seen as justified or protected. But when marginalized voices challenge the status quo, their speech is suddenly seen as dangerous or harmful. And that's how free expressions becomes conditional. And that's not what we call real freedom. Moving forward to the York University case, where there was student unions released a statement supporting Palestinians and describing the Hamas attack as resistance. The reaction to this case was immediate. The administration and media condemned them, and politicians demanded punishments for the students. And this case shows how free speech disappears when it challenges the dominant narrative. And like when people speak for Palestine, it's labeled as hate, but when others defend Israel, it's accepted as an opinion. Moving forward to what I call it double standards and power. This double standard is everywhere. Supporting Israel's military action is called political opinion, but defending Palestinians is treated as extremism, and I don't see this fair. Even language itself is controlled. For example, the word resistance, it means survival and struggle for Palestinians. But politicians and media twist it to mean terrorism. And once that label is attached, people stop listening. So freedom of speech isn't about truth anymore, it's about the power. And it makes me come to a conclusion where you are free to speak only if your word do not threaten the people who are in power. So Talking about the role of media and institutions, media and universities claim to value open dialogue, but they often silence voices that question authority. Journalists, students, and artists have been punished just because they showed support for Palestine. And this isn't about safety, it's about shaping the story. When telling the truth becomes dangerous, society loses its moral direction. Next, here I'm talking about freedom versus hate speech. Many say limits on speech prevent harm, but I think silence causes harm too. For example, when people are afraid to speak about injustice, that injustice grows stronger and becomes even more dangerous. Censoring voices for like Palestine does not protect anyone, it hides the truth, that's it. But true peace comes from listening, not just from silent and not talking. Next is a global reflection. The hypocrisy is a global. So, for example, when Ukrainians resist occupation, people called them heroes, and even the whole world called them heroes. But when Palestinians do, they're called terrorists. It's the same act, fighting occupation, but it's praised in one case and condemned in another. And that shows how freedom of expression is political, not moral. True freedom means giving everyone the right to speak, not just the powerful people. And here we come into a conclusion that freedom of expression should be equal and unconditional. But when it's used to protect authority instead of truth, it becomes meaningless. The York University case and reaction to pro Palestinians' speech prove that freedom is still selective. And standing up for Palestinian is not hate, it's humanity. You're defending people who are being killed and people who are trying to stand up for their lands. So, in my opinion, speaking truth, even when it's unpopular, is the purest form of freedom. Thank you for watching, and if you have any questions, please let me know.